Hello everybody, Backyard Bullion here. Now today we're going to be talking about taxation on gold, silver and platinum. It's a really interesting topic and one which I know that there's going to be a lot of differing and also contentious opinions about. There are a lot of people out there who vehemently argue that taxation on anything is bad, let alone on the real wealth that you hold in the form of bullion. So today we aim to, first of all, share some of my thoughts and opinions on taxation generally on bullion. I don't necessarily see it as the worst thing in the world, but does that make me happy to pay taxes on my silver, gold and platinum? No, of course not. And then we're also going to talk about some of the tax situation for us here in the United Kingdom and also certain things to consider for people even outside the UK, because a lot of what we deal with in the UK is applicable to different countries around the world. I really want to make it abundantly clear though, before we get started on all of this is not a tax advice video. This is not a financial advice video. I am just a guy who likes to talk about shiny things here on YouTube. A lot of what I am regurgitating today in terms of stuff about tax is taken directly off the Royal Mint's website. So I'll put a link to that down in the description below, but I would highly recommend that anybody else watching this goes and do your own research on taxation, especially if you're outside of the United Kingdom. So, taxation, gosh, now Benjamin Franklin once said that there are only two things certain in life, death and taxes. Taxes are an inevitability in life, as we know. Everybody has to pay taxes. It's the price you pay to live in a modern society. It keeps society running, which is why I am a firm believer in taxation being generally a good thing for society. Now, there are a lot of you out there who will very strongly disagree with that, and it's almost, you'll see it as your constitutional right not to pay taxes or your constitutional duty not to pay taxes. I very strongly disagree with that. I do think that taxation generally is a good thing. That said, I don't want to necessarily pay taxes on items that I buy when I don't have to. If I can buy them somewhere else without having to spend extra money in the form of tax, then I will look to do that. And that is something that I think a lot of people out there will sympathise with. You know, if there was no other choice and you had to buy something like this 10-ounce Queen's Beast Griffin from a UK dealer, let's say there weren't any in the European Union where there might be lower rates of tax, then that is what it is. And if you wanted to buy it and you had to buy it, then I would probably still buy them. And it raises an interesting question for things like Brexit. So at the moment, this is one of the things to talk about in the UK. So at the moment in the UK, there is a 20% sales tax on silver. Lovely jubbly. I've talked about that many times before. We buy from Europe, like the European Mint, where the tax rate in Estonia is 0%. And it's obviously a lot cheaper. You have to pay for shipping, but it's obviously a lot cheaper, which makes things a lot better for us. But if that avenue is closed due to Brexit, or if the Estonian laws change, then of course you have to consider where you want to go with your investing. Now, fortunately for us here in the United Kingdom, gold is VAT free, sales tax free. So we can purchase as much gold as we want without having to spend 20% sales tax every time we do it. Now, the reason for this is very interesting because there used to be VAT, so sales tax on gold products. But in the year 2000, this was changed to bring it more in line with the European rules on VAT and the various different countries in Europe that had 0% or very, very small rates of VAT on their gold. And it was thought that it was done that way so that the United Kingdom would be a little bit more competitive in the gold coin market. So that was of course a really big change, and gold being a very high ticket item. You know, if you wanted to buy a 1-ounce gold coin back in the 90s, it would have cost you an awful lot more in that sales tax compared with buying a silver coin. So gold was really a very kind of, it wasn't even seen almost as an investment, and I use that term very loosely back then. But of course, with the dropping of the VAT side of things, gold is very much more that go-to place. You can see here the price I paid. This is how I label some of my coins, by the way. So this is a nice little return on the investment that I bought from Atkinson's back in May 2017. Now, the point here that I'm trying to make is that taxes on this gold and silver at the front end is manageable. You can work a way around that. There are different things that you can do to mitigate that. Buying brand new silver, that will usually incur 20% VAT in the UK. Buying second-hand silver, however, as long as it's been correctly designated as second-hand silver by whoever's selling it as a dealer, then you will usually get that at VAT free prices or VAT exempt prices. So if there was a whole bunch of these Parliament House florins that the dealer, say, had purchased on the second-hand market from somebody, they walked in through the door and said, I've got 100 of these, I'd like to sell them. The dealer buys them, they register them correctly as second-hand coins, they can then sell them VAT free. So that's something definitely to consider. You can pick up VAT free second-hand silver from a lot of different dealers in the UK. Now, one other thing to talk about, which is the front end side of things, is online sales taxes. Now, this is something which I know has been causing a lot more sort of shaking of the ground news. It's been coming out more to the forefront in the United States at the moment, because there are a number of different states out there. And I don't know if this is federalized. I don't know if this is all across all the different states or whether it's just for certain states at this moment. So anybody in the US can please correct me. That would be very helpful. But there are now sales taxes for online retailers in the US on various different metals. On various different things that they sell, including metals. That's the main problem. It's not necessarily a tax specifically on metals. It's more of a tax on those online retailers. Now, that is a tax which I have a problem with for a number of reasons. Ultimately, I don't necessarily have a problem with it because of another reason which I'll talk about, which is supporting small independent businesses which actually have a footprint, say, on the high street. But generally speaking, online retail sales taxes are not necessarily good for my business. They're not good for a lot of businesses out there, and ultimately they're not necessarily as good for the consumer as well, because the vast majority of people, certainly in the UK, will buy their coins online, and if an online sales tax is introduced on retailers selling online, then that will cause prices to go up and be an interesting thing for bullion dealers to look to work out. And it will be, it could be a fairly significant tax at the end of the day, which would ultimately be passed on to the consumer, to the customer. So definitely something to think about there. Now, in terms of how you feel about that, personally, I'm of two minds. I like the idea of where it's going in terms of trying to protect certain sort of shops and businesses, because I know there's, of course, running an online shop, I know there are significantly more overheads if you were to have a physical footprint location on the high street, say, obviously paying rent, utility bills, usually business rate taxes, certainly in the UK anyway. So there's lots of different things to consider. An online shop just needs website fees basically, and that's it. So there are lots of different things to consider on that front. However, a blanket across the board kind of footprint for everybody, I don't really see the point. If you're going to tax bullion dealers who retail online, you're going to drive them out of business. There's just no point. People won't buy from there. They'll go to somewhere else. They'll go to a physical location, and that, I think, is not a good thing. So it's almost counterintuitive to what the whole point of those online sales taxes are. So that said, that's all the kind of front-end taxes. Now, front-end taxes are, I say avoidable. It's interesting. I get a lot of questions about the group orders or buying from Europe when you buy these things. Is it avoidance? Is it tax evasion? Is it the back? I never remember which is the really bad one, the one that's actually a crime. Is it avoidance or evasion? I think it's evasion, but I think avoidance is where you just go and you find something else that's legal, loopholes almost, that will allow you to purchase it at a different price without the tax. And that's fine. That's the UK's government's fault for, losing competitiveness with regards to the silver market. It is what it is. That's life. But there are taxes at the other end, which a lot of people forget about or don't think will apply to them, and that is capital gains tax. We call it capital gains tax here in the United Kingdom. I'm not entirely sure what you call it in the US, but I think it's probably a similar principle. The ultimate idea is if you buy something at a certain price, you sell it at a higher price at a later date, you have made a capital gain, you have made money. So if you buy this griffin, I haven't written the price on this one. I think these griffins were bought for around about £1,050 or so at the time of purchase, at the time of release. So £1,050 for these. These are premium coins now. They have a nice little premium on them. I've seen a few dealers out there trying to sell them for £1,700, £1,800. I think a realistic price for these may be around the £1,400 to £1,500 mark. That would yield a £350 profit. So that would theoretically be your capital gain. However, this is the great thing in the UK, and this is one of the good things about gold and silver in the UK. There are capital gains tax exempt options and coins, which is fantastic. Now, coinage generally is seen as capital gains exempt. So if it's a UK denominated coin, so you'll see here on the back, it's got £100 written on it there at the top, £100. That is usually a good clear indicator that it is capital gains exempt. Of course, you need to double check this with HMRC for certain issues, but I haven't ever come across a coin like, for example, the Royal Arms coin here, which is just 1 ounce of fine silver, but it has that important denomination there, £2. That makes it capital gains exempt. But I haven't ever seen a differing coin from that, but I don't know. Now, the same is not necessarily... I think it's the same for platinum. I do believe it's the same for platinum, actually. Yes, I am looking at it now, and I believe that these are capital gains tax exempt as well. They are VATed at the front end from the UK for platinum, but it's important. So now, a lot of people don't really think about capital gains tax as a thing that will affect them. It's certainly not something to worry about if you're at the smaller end of the stacking world. If you're just buying an ounce of silver every month or week or so, you'll probably be quite unlucky. In fact, silver would literally have to go to sort of £10,000 an ounce for you to really kind of worry about it. But nevertheless, it's something to think about. If you've got a large stack, if you're buying significant amounts of silver or gold and you're going to be holding it for 10, 20, 30 years, then it's definitely something to think about, because not only will the premium grow, but also the base metal prices will grow as well. So in theory, if you have, 100 ounces a month for, gosh, however many months, let's call it 5 years worth, you're going to have a really significant holding of silver. And if that is then sold all in one go, and you make more than the capital gains tax allowance limit, which I believe is around the 11,500 mark. Again, this is not a financial advice tax video, guys. You can see I haven't got the facts and figures in front of me with regards to that. In fact, it would be good to find that out. So let me just Google that. But the point is, you will have an allowance to get that profit. It's 12,000 for the year 2019-20, and it is 11,700 for the year 2018-19 tax years. So there's definitely a lot of profit to be eaten up there without having to worry about it. Now, is that really a problem? Well, it can be. So for us in the United Kingdom, if we buy things like the American gold coins or coins which are not UK pound denominated, then they are capital gains taxed, which means that if you make a profit on them, then you will be paying capital gains if you're above that limit. Now, it's important to remember that that limit is annual. Also, that limit is per person. So if you are married, then your spouse will also be able to have that allowance applied to any profits that you make. As a married couple, you can gift anything to your spouse. So I can just say, well, yes, I bought this technically, but we are married. Mrs. Backyard Bullion now owns this coin. She sells it, and she has that capital gains tax allowance. So in theory, a married couple can have up to 24,000 in 2019-20 allowance, which would mean you would have to have, say, 24 of these 1 ounce gold St. Gulden's Eagles. You'd have to make £1,000 profit on each of them, £24,000 profit. And even then, you would not pay any tax because you would be just at the limit, which I think is really interesting. So, there's a lot of things to consider about that. It's definitely something to factor in if you've got a really huge stack, but at the same time, you can always plan that. And if you have, an array of different coins, if you have a selection of different capital gains, the majority of mine are capital gains exempt, like Britannia's, Queen's Beasts, things like that. Sovereigns even, we haven't talked about sovereigns. So sovereigns are the go-to kind of cheap, premium capital gains tax VAT exempt coins. They are really very good if you want to just get gold at a cheap price with a low swing. So there is an option. And a lot of people will forget about capital gains tax being a thing to worry about, with good reason, because it won't affect the majority of people. And even if it did, if it got to that point where it was an issue, you can pick and choose which coins to sell and make a profit on in a particular year. And you can then, of course, rein in the types of coins so that your capital gains exempt profit is, a certain amount, and your capital gains non-exempt profit is a certain amount as well. So there are definitely ways around it. So last thing just to talk about, poured silver, that is not capital gains tax exempt. It's not anything. It's just a piece of silver that somebody's made. No matter what the hallmarks are, that is definitely something to factor in as well. So what does that all mean? Now, for me personally, as I said at the start of the video, let's sum up. I don't mind paying taxes generally. Taxes are a good thing. I will do my own self-assessment tax forms at the end of the year for my self-employed business. And, there are a lot of people out there who will, as I said, vehemently, very strongly feel that taxation in any form is a bad thing. Now, it's important to remember that whenever I sell something like my hand-poured silver, or if I buy a coin to sell as a business asset, ultimately I will be paying tax on it. I will be paying income tax on it. I'll be paying national insurance on it, on the value of the profit that I make. So if I make £100 profit on a particular product, then I will end up paying £20 in income tax, and I'll also pay a certain amount in not VAT, in national insurance. So there are definitely things to think about for online retailers like that. Do I like doing that? Ultimately, no, but it's part of life. It's part of a business. I do like the fact that you can, contribute to society, especially when you're self-employed. And I remember when I was younger and I was working and I was, on pittance salary doing my first job in a lone call centre. It was horrible. And I always remember thinking, one day it'd be nice to be a higher rate taxpayer and actually have to worry about those things. Because if you get to that point, you're earning enough money to warrant it, and it's not the end of the world. So definitely this, taxation is an interesting thing. I like contributing to society. I like the fact that, here in the UK we have free healthcare, as good as it is. I have some surgery scheduled on my foot. That's all free. If I was somewhere else where you have to pay for medical care, perhaps I'd have to release some of these gold coins to pay for that. Who knows? Ultimately, though, do I like paying taxes on my gold and silver? That's the crux of this argument. No, it's real money, it's value, it's wealth, it's real. Why should you pay taxes on the real stuff here? It just seems sort of double standard, because when you purchase this stuff, you're of course using money that you've already paid tax on. So it's a double taxation standard, which I don't like. That's the only thing that I feel quite strongly about. So I hope that has been an interesting video for you all. If you have enjoyed today's video, please do put a thumbs up on it and share it around on your social media. That would be very helpful. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions on this subject. I think it's a really interesting one. It is one that's going to split opinion though, so if you disagree with me, that's absolutely fine, but please comment respectfully of mine and other people's opinions, and I'll see you down in the comment section for a good, fun, healthy debate. Otherwise, that's it from me today. If you want to see other videos from us in the future, then make sure you hit the subscribe button with notifications on if you want those notifications. Otherwise, that is it from me today. Thank you one and all for watching. I hope you have a fantastic week. And as always, please make sure that you like, share, comment and subscribe for more.